Hi guys, Mr. Hiscox coming back to you. We are finishing up chapter 14 in the next couple days here. We're starting on the different characteristics of the biomes. I kind of break them into terrestrial biomes, and then we do some of the aquatic biomes. I don't get a whole lot into like the polar ice caps. There's just not very much that live there. From last week, we covered what is an energy pyramid. An energy pyramid is a diagram that shows decreasing energy as you move through a food chain. We already went over these questions, but if we needed to, we could go back. So let's talk about biomes. Your homework today is 494 to 501, and then there's this guided reading 14.4. So what are biomes now? We've been talking a little bit about biomes, but now we're going to get deep into them. A biome is a large geographic area that has similar climate, similar plants, and animals. We often talk about climate as the average weather in an area over time. The plants we refer to as producers, as we had earlier in the chapter, and the animals are the consumers. This is a biome map. As you can see, we are here in this temperate forest, often called the deciduous forest. The center of the United States is grasslands. Here, Canada, Russia, Northern Asia, Eastern Europe, or West, yeah, Eastern Europe in here. Those are all taiga. This light blue up here, that's your tundra. Dark green are the tropical rainforests. There's different kinds of oranges for different types of deserts then. So I'm going to start north and work my way south. So I don't spend a lot of time on the polar ice biomes. You really only have a few things that live there, polar bears and seals. There's not even a very good producer in the polar ice biome because they almost entirely base the polar ice on fish that get their producers from the aquatic environments. So we're going to start with tundras. Now, each of these slides has a video that you should be watching at home. I cannot replay the videos because they're other people's videos. The climate of the tundra is very, very cold. It stays cold for most of the year with a very, very short growing season. The average rainfall is less than 25 centimeters, so less than a foot of rain. We here in Pennsylvania have days where we get 4 or 5 inches of rain on a really heavy storm. In fact, I remember one time a hurricane went through, we got like 7 inches of rain in like 2 days. Producers of the tundra. Now you can see here that there's like this mossy looking stuff. That mossy looking stuff is a type of lichen. Now a lichen is a symbiotic relationship between a fungus and an algae. So the fungus can absorb nutrients and break down rocks. The algae is photosynthetic. They live together. They're happy, happy, fun land. You get lots of mosses, lots of grasses in the actual tundra, but you don't get trees. Why don't you get trees in the tundra? The tundra has permafrost. The ground is frozen. Some of the characteristic animals that you will find in the tundra. So, in other words, these are the consumers that you would expect to find. You have caribou. The caribou love to eat caribou moss, and these are the types they will actually dig through the snow and find it. Muskox, a remnant of the last ice age, still found in some of our northern areas, especially Alaska. Lemmings, a really thick rodent, tend to love to burrow into the lichens and just slightly into the ground. Ptarmigans are very much like our grouse, although they turn white in the winter. In fact, this is a ptarmigan right here. In the wintertime, they turn bright white and they have feathers on their feet, unlike a lot of birds do. Arctic foxes, polar bears, and grizzly bears. In the summertime of the tundra, you get these puddles, and the puddles make for good places for insects to hatch. So you get a lot of birds and things that migrate to the tundra during the summer to feed on these insects. The taiga. The taiga is what we used to call the coniferous forest. So you have these cone-bearing trees. You can see these evergreens here. So these look like spruce, balsam, fir, all that kind of things. In the taiga, you have a cold, but not as cold as the tundra climate. You get a little bit more rain, about 30 to 60 centimeters. So 30 centimeters is really close to a foot. 60 centimeters obviously would be 2 foot. In the taiga, you have evergreens. They do not lose their leaves, and they have tiny leaves. Well, having tiny leaves protects them from the snow, and it also prevents transpiration. Well, what other biome has a little bit of water that has needles for leaves? The desert. The smaller the leaves on the plant, the less transpiration. These evergreens also have a waxy coating. If you go out and find a evergreen and take some of the needles, you can actually scratch some of the wax off with your fingers. You can actually seal it peeling off the needles. That waxy coating protects them from freezing and it slows transpiration. The fact that they're shaped like a triangle helps with the snow. The fact that they never lose their leaves, as soon as it gets warm, they can start photosynthesis. Unlike the leaves that we have around here, those trees have to get their leaves out to go back and get photosynthesis going. In the taiga, the soil is kind of acidic, very swampy, not very good. Um, in fact, the word taiga is a Russian word that means swamp forest. Some of the animals that you'll see in the taiga: squirrels, beaver, moose, bears, weasel, lynx, grouse, and this thing called the crossbill. Now, the word conifer means cone bearing, so pine cones is what they're referring to. And if we click this link here, here's our crossbill. I found this just a picture of one. These are very highly adapted, and these beaks are literally what they use to pry open a pine cone and get the seeds out. Very highly adapted to the taiga. Our next biome is the grassland biome. Now, the grassland biome, there's tropical and there's temperate. I kind of lump them all together for our purposes because I know you guys have done some of the biome stuffs in the past. Obviously, in the grassland biome, the major vegetation are different types of grasses. You've got all different types of grasses, and in those grasses, you have very fertile soil. Those grasses have been slowly decaying for tens of thousands of years. You've got herds of animals that do their droppings there. And then in the grassland, to help make it fertile, you get fires from time to time because the grassland does not have a ton of rain. Now, it gets a little bit more rainfall than the taiga, 50 to 90 centimeters, so roughly 2 feet to 3 feet of rain a year. That rainfall doesn't wash away the nutrients. In fact, in the center of the United States, we call that the breadbasket because the soil is so fertile that the central United States makes most of our agricultural food. Where would you find you're going to find them in North America, up into Canada. You'll find grasslands in South America. They call them the pampas down there. In Africa, the tropical grasslands called the savannas. Um, you don't have enough water for lots of trees, but you do get some trees, not very many in the grasslands. Things like buffaloes and many of these bigger herd animals that wander the grasslands tend to trample the shoots, so they don't grow back very well when they get stepped on like grass, like in your yard. If you step on the grass in your yard, it grows back. In the grasslands, they tend to dry out in the summertime, so they burn off. And these are some of the factors that tend to handle or give us what we have now as the grasslands. Different types of animals that you may find in the grasslands: elephants, lions, zebras, cheetahs, antelope, snakes, and mice. Obviously, those are all in Africa. If you're talking about the United States grasslands, you're going to get buffalo, pronghorn antelope, which are very beautiful and very, very fast, mule deer, prairie dogs, hawks, and coyotes. Unfortunately, with all grasslands, because they are so fertile, they tend to be very much used for farming and ranching. If you overwork the grassland, you can actually cause a process called desertification, where you basically have destroyed the ground to where it's no longer useful and like a desert. Speaking of deserts, a desert biome is the area that receives less than 25 centimeters of rainfall a year. That's about 10 inches of rain. So less than 10 inches of rain. Some deserts in the Sahara get less than an inch of rainfall a year. They are located in southwestern North America, so New Mexico, Nevada, all those areas down that way are all desert. Western Asia has some. They're very cold. They're higher up in the mountains. Australia has a lot of desert. South America has desert, and Africa has the largest desert called the Sahara. So you don't have to be scorching hot to be a desert, although they are usually found close to the equator. The Gobi Desert is actually in Central Asia, and it's relatively cold because it's pretty high up in the mountains. Um, Plants in the desert must be adapted to the lack of rainfall. Well, you think of cactuses, so they have needles. Needles prevent water loss. Needles prevent animals from eating you. Cacti often have very wide branching roots that go very, very far and very, very thin under the soil. Why? Well, they absorb the water as soon as it hits. If it's dew, if it's anything that hits the soil as far as moisture goes, they suck it up and they store it in their thick stems. Well, the thick stems are often covered with a waxy covering to protect them. These are prickly pear cactus and they actually store water inside. So these wide roots would go way out underneath the sides of the plant to absorb water as soon as it touches the ground. They absorb it up and hold it. Um, they often, if they're not a cacti, they have very, very small, thin leaves. The smaller the leaf, the less the transpiration. And then they have some way, all the plants in the desert have some way of storing water. Consumers of the desert, well, they have to have adaptations to deal with the heat. They may have really large ears, like certain types of foxes in Africa will have. They may burrow underground to stay cool. It can be like camels that have hairs to protect their eyes from the sand, and they store fat in their humps. And when they burn the fat, it makes water. Or it could be animals that have learned to deal with the heat by being smaller or learning how to get water from plants, like some animals can do. All right, so that's just about the end of the time that we have for this video. Make sure that you get your reading done. This reading will tell you more about things. There is a video for every single biome. Please watch them. And until next time, I'm Mr. Hescox. You guys be good, be safe, and I will finish this section next time.